lockdown, so let's procrastinate and talk about JonBenèt Ramsey and her murder case from December 1996. So I wrote a few things down. I'll just try and work through them. I'm not sure even if they're going to be making particular sense, but if we think about prior sexual abuse, so, we know that 32 times JonBenèt went to the paediatrician between March 93 and November 96. 5 of these visits were about vaginitis. Okay. 27 other visits seem like an awful lot, don't they? Yes, a mother can commit abuse against a child this way, and I guess they would commit the abuse where it's less likely to be seen, and it can be super cruel when the woman is the abuser, and maybe there's jealousy there. I don't know, but certainly even little JonBenèt herself seems to be telling about abuse. If it is Patsy that's trying to really somehow have abuse be found out and out in the open. JonBenèt did some drawings. She was often drawing a circle with this funny little diamond in the middle, and indeed she drew herself with a t-shirt on with this image on her chest, and appearing to have no underwear or, well, no trousers or skirt on. She could be doing a hula hoop. There's a ring around her thighs or knees that could be a hula hoop. Could be her pants, as some people suggest. Other images that she drew showed her with no mouth and many limbs, so looking a little bit frantic but silent, kind of like a silent scream. So, was JonBenèt herself trying to express that she was in some sort of trouble? Because it can be argued that the damage to her hymen and vagina was both pre-existing and then fresh. And there was the 911 call on December 23rd. There was a hang-up call. Was this JonBenèt? Was this someone calling to report abuse prior to her death? Holly Smith, who was the investigator, she's the sexual abuse investigator for Boulder Police at the time. She was taken off the case, which is interesting. I've mentioned before that, certain types of inflammation, well, it can be caused from, sweating, from tight clothes, from washing incorrectly with soap. Certainly some of JonBenèt's costumes could have caused this type of sweating and then inflammation. But many experts believe that there is plenty of reason to believe in the idea of sexual abuse rather than any other situation. This is not only because of the damage to her hymen and how old it is, but what the measurement of her vaginal opening was, etc. So, a lot of signs, they do seem to point to Patsy, and there's been books, I know, written about Patsy, and first, MSMs, pursued John, then turned to Patsy, then turned to Burke. Is the murder of JonBenèt by Patsy something John would stand for and stand up against and show this united front? with her about. I mean, Patsy's devastation and everything. I mean, is this because of that guilt when she's sobbing about the punishment that should be meted down to the perpetrator? She's sobbing. It's as if she can't imagine maybe her son going to prison or her husband going to the electric chair. Is she sobbing for herself? Did she discover John Ramsey abusing JonBenèt? Did she try to hit John with a baseball bat and end up hitting JonBenèt? Did she think she was going to be hitting an intruder and she ended up hitting JonBenèt and it was her husband? You know, because John had all the power and the money, and he could have put Patsy in the slammer or away in a mental institution for mental health reasons, possibly. You know, he could have made the excuses that he's very distracted with his business and was intent on building a life. I mean, he's alluded to this, that, oh, you know, maybe he was too intent on building up his business, on acquiring bigger and bigger homes, more and more wealth and financial security, but also possessions, you know, and maybe he should have been focusing on other things. You know, he had plenty of excuses that he could have made, you know. So would he have stuck by Patsy if she was a perpetrator of abuse, if she had just committed this murder without him, you know? Would he stand by her side as she has stood by his, you know? I don't know. Yeah, so if it was not John, would this cover-up have happened? You know, in the books that he writes afterwards, yeah, they don't seem to be about searching for JonBenèt's killer, from what I can understand. Look, I mean, I would be interested in reading his books. The reason why I don't read other people's books, because you can get facts from other sources. You can get the facts from other sources. You can read documents, and then you can watch interviews. You can watch these parents speak. So I find that I want my own opinions based on my own thoughts after looking at facts and after observing people. I don't want my thoughts to come from other people's ideas, from being planted in my mind. I want to come to conclusions myself, and that's why I won't read these other books. You know, John's daughter, surviving daughter Melinda, has said, well, look, he was a loving father. And many people say this, John appeared to be a loving father or was a kind person, because, you know, that's not how abusers appear at all, is it? They all look like warlocks and smell, and they have yellow hair and long fingernails and stuff. So Melinda said he was a loving father, not at all, you know, and yeah, not all children though in families are abused, you know. Some don't get the same treatment. Sometimes children are singled out or just left out. With regards to Burke again, so there is precedence for children of actually 9 years old killing children of 6 years old. So there's a case, his name's Danny Murphy. So on April the 20th, 2009, Danny was up playing with one of his favourite model planes, and he left his younger brother Kyle, who was 7 at the time, left him in the room with his plane, saying he could play with it. He left the room to go and get something else. He came back in, and Kyle, the young boy, had accidentally damaged or broken his plane. So yeah, Danny killed Kyle in a rage. So Dan and Sarah, the parents, they had already lost a child, so they covered up this murder. They covered up the murder with the help of one of their friends, who was a newly appointed police detective. So there had been abductions and rapes of young boys in their area, and so they made this crime out to look like it was part of this series of heinous events, that Danny had been killed by this rapist. Afterwards, it's reported that Danny, the child who committed the murder, was extremely disturbingly nonchalant. And Danny was a sociopath. Now, many people might say, well, Burke appears to be the same sort of sociopath. He displays many of these kind of weird, nonchalant expressions in his body language and in the things that he says. Oh, you know, I guess, and how he sort of talked about JonBenèt's death in interviews. But, you know, John and Patsy, that it's not like they sequestered Burke away. Burke went to high school. He had quite a normal high school experience. I think he's on the swim team. He wasn't a really highly achieving student grades-wise, you know, B+ student, but, you know, he went on to Purdue, P-U-R-D-U-E University, and studied engineering. He wasn't set up in his own apartment, and certainly the Ramseys could have afforded that. You know, he's described as being reasonably social and as being socially active in university, and he stayed in a dormitory. So he's been in these group settings, in these social settings, public settings. I mean, he's, you know, been protected to some extent. Let's forget for a minute all the libel and defamation cases that were brought against all sorts of people, you know, authors and TV stations and the like. But, you know, he, you know, people weren't really just allowed general access to him, but he wasn't cloistered away and, okay, let's keep our little cluster B psychopath, you know, tucked away and out of trouble for the rest of his life. I mean, you know, as I've said before, again, these things don't happen in a vacuum. If Burke was abusing JonBenèt in this sort of very serious fashion, I mean, and I don't just mean hitting her with golf clubs. That may sound whack, pardon the pun, but, you know, siblings do fight with other children and their families. You know, they fight, and sometimes violently, you know, often just boy on boy, but yeah, sometimes, yeah, people striking out. Now, Burke could have Asperger's or otherwise be on the autism spectrum, because I believe we don't use Asperger's as a term any longer. But, you know, there could be all sorts of reasons for Burke being the way he is, without him being a cluster B psychopath, or, you know, what people might say as a sociopath. And don't you think that throughout high school and university there would have been reports of, you know, this odd behaviour? Could he have acted in various strange ways towards peers, members of the opposite sex, or what have you, you know? Now, Burke's made a lot of money out of his libel and defamation cases, I'd say, and he's living a comfortable life, and he does, yes, he does not want to work in a sort of public environment or what have you. You know, he works from home. But, you know, many people do that these days, and, you know, kind of can't blame them, I guess. You know, yeah, and people will say he's never officially cleared, but, you know, a 9-year-old boy or girl, but a 9-year-old child can't be convicted of first-degree murder. So, you know, you can't be cleared of that either. You know, but I agree, you know, Burke being the perpetrator does give very, very good reason for the parents to perform all their theatrics, the cover-up, etc. You know, was Burke playing doctor with JonBenèt? Does that explain garrotting, though? I mean, who has been doing the garrotting and the hitting on the head? Yeah, you know, the grand jury wording, and this goes for what they stated against John and Patricia, is that they did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detection, apprehension, or discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such person for the commission of a crime, knowing the person being assisted has committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse, first degree murder and child abuse. So, you know, if Burke can't be convicted of first degree murder, why is the grand jury indictment, or you know, their recommendation, why does it mention first degree murder very specifically? I mean, okay, there's no DNA supposedly from John Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey in certain places, and, you know, there's none from Burke either. And would he be as careful as an adult would if he was abusing her that way? I don't know. Whereas fibres from John Ramsey's clothing were found inside JonBenèt's pants. Now, JonBenèt was handled after her death by John. It is John that went down and found her and made sure he was holding her, and was seen doing this. If he had just come back up, he wouldn't have been seen to be touching her body, and therefore having a plausible explanation for fibres transferring, DNA transferring, maybe, I don't know. But, you know, it's John that was, yeah, muddying that crime scene. You know, there is absolutely no intruder evidence, but it's John that is just pursuing this narrative all the time. And let's go back to the note, because I'm not convinced Patsy wrote this note at all, because I think John could easily emulate the note as being Patsy's, using her pad, her pen, putting them back in place and copying her style of handwriting purposefully. You know, think about the crime scenes. Patsy's pad, Patsy's pen, Patsy's paintbrush, etc. Burke's penknife left in the laundry. Everything just randomly chosen by an intruder that belongs to everyone but John? No. You know, it's John that's capable of mimicking and mocking Patsy, gaslighting her. You know, he's using her terminology, and even down to don't grow a brain, John. You know, the way that's written. Yeah, you know, he's really pushing that agenda of that note at first. You know, it's all about him, and it's to hurt him, not the family, to hurt him. And then all that staging with the window, with the suitcase. You know, it's John saying that he's carried JonBenèt to bed. Is this also to try and explain fibres, etc.? Putting her to bed when Burke, a child early on, is saying that, you know, she walked up to bed. He last saw her alive in the car, but she walked up to bed. Yeah, why lie? Why lie? You know, what screws it all up is who rang 911. John didn't ring 911. Now, it might be because if they're in collusion, even if it's just from this morning on, rather than immediately after the crime or before the crime, yes, maybe it's better if Patsy calls. She's in the theatre. She's theatrical. She's an actress. She could put on a performance. And I mean, certainly, we have a kidnapping. There's a note. And then thirdly, and our daughter is gone. Because, you know, I feel like the first thing you'd say is my daughter is missing, and give your address and then answer the questions, or maybe then say, look, you know, there's a note. I kind of think that Patsy did not read the note even. She doesn't seem to know what's in it. Sure, she says SBTC, victory, but, you know, that clearly stands out at an eye glance because it's written, you know, separately. It's on the half page piece, and it's down the bottom, and it's separate. So you could clearly easily see that if you just glanced at this note. Dear John Ramsey, and looking at the end, you wouldn't hang around reading all of this. And it's John, indeed, that says he's come down and he's read it. You know, so Patsy has called 911 when the note specifically says no, and I think she's done it before John has had a chance to stop her. And I mean, this has changed his plans because he wanted to take her body away. He wanted to take JonBenèt away. There's no doubt in my mind about that. You know, whether it is, okay, you could argue whether it is to hide Burke's guilt or to try and help Patsy. I mean, he could carry on without Patsy. You know, if she's in the slammer. Yeah. His golf clubs were moved or disappeared. Things could have been hidden in there. You know, why has he done it? Was Patsy suspicious and taking JonBenèt to the doctor because she's suspicious? She needs to know. She doesn't understand it. But, you know, the doctor was not helping her out, not taking her seriously, didn't know what to look for. Or because they were a good family, he just completely dismissed it. When in actual fact, if he had examined her, Child Protective Services should have been called, would have been called by someone else if they had taken seriously what they were looking at. John Ramsey would have been investigated for child abuse. JonBenèt's broken hymen and size of her vaginal opening were abnormal. They match what is seen in child abuse cases 99% of the time. The sizing, normally sick. I'm sorry, but you know, look, if you're watching any content at all, anywhere about JonBenèt Ramsey, if you can't be an adult about it, or if you don't know there's going to be serious themes, you're screwed in the head. Just don't watch. I'm not saying these things to be sensationalistic or offensive, as I have said. I know some people that have been watching my channel already or just tune in will not like it. I'm not trying to offend anybody, hurt anybody. But, you know, if you need to go, you need to go. If you need to unsub as well, you need to do that, and that is fine. I make my videos for the people that find my channel because of the content I do make, and they want to watch it and they want to discuss it. And it's not for everyone, and I am sorry. Many experts know what the findings show. Okay, 6 millimeters is 10 millimeters. This is up into the realms of pretty much without doubt there has been abuse. And there is very good reason to believe that there was ongoing abuse, not just the fresh trauma. Okay, so this could correlate to Patsy Ramsey taking JonBenèt to the doctor about this specifically. She's concerned. She knows. And then what's happening afterwards? I mean, there's more reason for her to have to stick by John. And, you know, John, in fact, commends her for this, you know, afterwards. But, you know, because she's got another child to protect in Patsy Ramsey's mind, hasn't she? And, you know, maybe she's going to stay within the marriage and do that because, number one, she is about appearances, reputations. Maybe she didn't think at first that it was John Ramsey abusing JonBenèt, you know, but maybe she couldn't, yeah. But maybe she didn't want to leave the marriage because she knew then Burke would be with John unchaperoned at times. So, you know, they did present a very united front, but there was a lot of Prozac on Patsy's half, and on John's half there was a lot of lizard lip licking, gaslighting, casting aspersions, etc., etc. In the Larry King video, there is a point when John licks his lips 49 times in 36 seconds. Now, if you're just a bit dry, if you're a bit nervous, if you're emotional, whatever, 49 times in 36 seconds, this is mental, okay? This is mental. This isn't, I mean, yes, if it's not suspect, yes, it's caused by what's going on in your head, and you know your body has a physical reaction, etc. But no, this is other sort of leakage. This is thought leakage. Yeah. You know, sure, plenty of reasons to suspect Patsy. Plenty of reasons, I guess, to suspect both. But keep considering, really. It's funny, I can say, don't be swayed by a book, don't be swayed by opinion, etc. But here I am giving you opinion and asking you to consider it and to think, you know, truly try to imagine what could really have going on, what is most likely. And that is that John Ramsey murdered his daughter, JonBenèt Ramsey. This is my opinion. It's for entertainment purposes. As unpleasant as that seems, no one wants to think of this. No one wants to think of that little family as having that secret. But this is the fact of life. This type of abuse happens anywhere, any demographic. So, racial, social, economic, it happens. And murder is rare in families, most rare sibling to sibling, then mother to daughter, father to daughter is most common, even though statistics don't mean everything, because obviously it's not 100% statistic, is it, for filicide here, but you know, there are all the things that aren't there and all the things that are there. You know, there isn't intruder evidence, and there is one man always talking about the intruder, and that is John Ramsey. There is evidence of so many things, and you have to look sometimes at, well, what is just most likely? It's nearly like painstakingly, pointedly, everything in the crime is purposefully not John's, and is pointedly pointing the finger at his wife, his son, his friend, his housekeeper, his neighbor, his business associates, this so-called foreign faction. You know, this is John being manipulative, being creative, being cunning, being sly. Yes, he may be the best father in the world to some children. Doesn't mean that he could resist JonBenèt, because Patsy Ramsey gave, what time are we at? Holy moly. Patsy Ramsey gave a lot of attention to John, and these crimes, father-daughter murders, are they the discard because the child is unwanted? Are they because there's all these reasons, and one of them is just testosterone. And Patsy having ovarian cancer, well, this has changed her hormones. Now, I can tell you, women without hormones, and if they're not on hormone treatment, or if they've been very unwell, when this changes, many things change. Not just that your libido drops so that you aren't inclined to initiate or respond to sexual interaction, but your body fails to respond in sexual ways if you do try. I mean, this happens, and then there would be the body image feelings you may have after ovarian cancer, after treatment. There may be the body shame, there may be all sorts of things, and then all your energy going into your daughter, and then creating, even subconsciously or not, this highly sexualized being who is portraying you basically because they are in your costumes. Now, they're the blonde version of your brunette self maybe, but yes, an idol of you, and your attention is being paid to this person and not your husband, who is a sexual being. Maybe his, you know, whack Christian beliefs are meaning that, you know, other women outside of the marriage aren't okay, but, you know, it's all in the family. That is crude. I don't mean to say it. I don't know how these things would come about, but it's something to consider if you think about the JonBenèt case. You must think about it if you're going to look at the whole and try to, if you want to tick these things off, you need to be able to say, well, incest, sexual abuse and murder perpetrated by the father to a daughter is completely out of bounds. It can be completely ruled out in this case. Can you honestly say that? And it's not because, oh, but he's a good man, he's hurting. Look, I've got no doubt that people who commit these crimes hurt. You know, that who's saying that they can't grieve? I'm not saying he can't grieve, that he's not a shattered man. Did losing Beth change him and change his attitudes? Who knows? But how did he truly view JonBenèt? And what was she there for? And what purpose did she serve for him? He's a busy man. He's working hard. He's earning the money. He's using a lot of hours. Is there what's his reward if Patsy's not sexual? And, you know, his office is, oh, Patsy, you know, you take the Ambien. I'm just going to be working down at my desk here in my office at the far end of our suite, where the spiral staircase is. You know, could Burke be hypnotized and see what he remembers? I mean, he was a child. He doesn't remember much, I would say, actually, from the particular night. But there's probably other things that he knows of or remembers, and as an adult he sees as different now. But it does seem like he's got a good relationship with John. There's a couple of photos floating around of them arm in arm and smiling. And John and Burke, sorry, always looks very casual and relaxed and kind of happy, but he just may not realize what was going on. He may not believe it either or want to. Or it is just in his interests to get through life. Without that, there's a lot at stake. And he's lost his mother at 19 years of age. Parents leaving their children through death or walking out on a marriage harms children. They hold on to what they have sometimes. How sophisticated was Burke at the age that he was? I'm not sure. You know, so I'm not sure how sophisticated his mind was and what he could conceive. I know as an adult that things as a child I've witnessed and experienced and heard and whatever, you know, with your adult eyes, you interpret things very differently. Things you yourself have done and have seen as a child, you know, got a certain response, you can see differently when you're an adult. And it's, yes, you don't want to believe it. Does it make it not true? You know, it's not pleasant. It is nearly unbelievable. Yes, it is. But truly, give it some thought. And I'm very interested. I mean, if you've got things that you think, okay, this, to me, this rules him out 100% in your mind, and it's fact or it's opinion based on fact or observation of the man himself and the interactions. But I beg you, go and watch as many interviews of John Ramsey as you can, of John with Patsy, anywhere and everywhere. The police interviews that were released much later, all of the TV interviews, everything. They're fascinating, and they might